Hi, and welcome to our Worried About Nothing podcast. Today we're going to talk about the march that happened in London yesterday at the time of recording, so the 26th of June 2021. I attended and we just talk about my experiences and probably segue off somewhere else because we generally do. So my name's Kim.
And I'm Danielle.
And welcome to our podcast. Welcome to our show. So yes, I attended the march yesterday with apparently 2 million other people. It was the biggest one yet. It's not been confirmed, but I heard it was around about 2 million people, and it definitely felt bigger than the last one. It was huge, and it was very different actually to the last one, or the last two that I've been to. It kind of seemed a bit chaotic yesterday, I guess because, with numbers growing, there's more and more people to kind of get lost. But at one point, me and a group of other people sort of wandered off because we thought we were following the leaders, and we ended up in this back street. We're kind of like, okay, what's happening? Somebody had to run after us and go, come back this way. I was like, oh, right, shit, sorry.
It's kind of interesting that they noticed that. They're like, no, this way.
I guess so, but it was a good while after. It was about 15 minutes later. So we could have ended up in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, so it was a different setup as well. So there were a lot of DJs and singers who haven't been, working through the pandemic. And they offered their services. So there were some music stops along the way, which was really nice for the people in front. Not so great for the people at the back, because the people in front would come up to the, the van or whatever it was that was playing music and be like, way, great, and start dancing and singing. The people at the back were probably going, what's going on? Why have we stopped? Can't hear anything,
Right.
But some of that was fun. So it was nice to have a bit of a dance and a sing-along, But it was interesting. It did feel different to the other two. And I posted in the Wisdom Life School group yesterday about it a bit. And just the energies were very different. I mean, there's always a carnival atmosphere. It's kind of like a big walking party, people had their signs, and some people were dressed up. There was this one woman I saw a photo of, and she had covered her entire body in masks, face masks. So she's wearing one on her face, around her head, around her neck, all the way down. It was like a dress made out of face masks. But there was a different energy to it, like I say, and it felt slightly manipulated or a bit controlled to me, because everyone's there, they're having fun, they're singing and chanting and marching along and talking to people, and like we always have done. But there were a few things I noticed along the way. There's always been police sort of along the sides, along the routes. But this time, the police had their riot helmets in hand. Every single one was holding one, which they hadn't done before. And there were vans parked all the way down. And it was very clear this time that it was a preset route. And I guess it has always been a preset route, but it somehow felt more organic before, in that we've gone off in different directions and the police have had to follow us. But this time, as we were marching along, the police were already there. And there was at least one van I saw with police dogs, which was a bit strange, because you'd imagine that they're usually used for, trying to sniff out explosives or drugs or something, And there was just a feeling of it being planned, It didn't feel very spontaneous this time. I mean, it was great. The atmosphere was really good. It was high. People were enjoying themselves and all of that. But there was just a sense to me, it really felt very staged. It didn't feel, there was something about it that wasn't very genuine. And people were joining and they were, chanting freedom and they were chanting love and all of these things. But there was just something, there was an underlying current there that wasn't there in the previous ones, or maybe I hadn't noticed in the previous ones, that just seemed manufactured. And there were quite a few people there that you could tell had the vaccine, because I'm quite sensitive to it. I can notice the difference. So either they were in there because they'd regretted having the vaccine, or they were in there infiltrating and trying to, like we've seen posts before, trying to, spread their spike proteins, which is always delightful when people talk about doing that, So that was interesting. And there seemed to be a lot. I mean, every time there's always people getting stoned and people drinking. But this time people were coming with, I saw people with suitcases full of alcohol, and there was a lot of people smoking. And to me, everyone's each their own, everyone's different. But to me, sort of numbing down or subduing or even kind of killing your kind of awareness in that way is strange, in that it kind of felt like festivals that you go to or parties that you go to, or maybe we used to go to when we were younger, or when I was younger. that I don't do anymore. And back in the days when I used to get stoned and I used to drink and all of these things, that's what you do. You go to a party, it'd be a festival, you'd get stoned, you get have a drink on, and it'd be fun, and you'd be chanting. But because of that, the atmosphere was not everywhere, but in some aspects, as I was walking, was kind of, there was an underlying non-peaceful, non-freedom, non-loving energy there, in that there was no awareness. So you'd kind of be walking along with people, and okay, you're shoulder to shoulder with people, but people would barge past and they'd kind of step on your feet, or they'd kind of elbow you and stuff, and they didn't even, there was no awareness that you were a person they'd done that to sometimes. And so it just felt very different. I mean, it depends on who you were talking to and who you were walking with, but so some people, it was just lovely. It was just, having a laugh, having a chat. But other people, it was kind of like, oh, I'm not sure about this, and I think I posted in the group yesterday as well that it looked to me like it was kind of, we were almost in this big goldfish bowl, and it was like this huge mass of people just kind of chanting freedom and believing they were free, and sort of mocking people who were wearing masks and weren't free, but at the same time not having any awareness that they were also being controlled and manipulated. Because I really saw clearly, and it was interesting, I'd not seen it in this way before, that there was a program to it, in that the government not only allowed the Freedom March to happen, but actively encouraged it. Because when I was marching along, it's kind of, I felt that it was staged, it felt fake to me. And also I got a message from somebody afterwards, or halfway through, but I read it afterwards, saying that they'd heard somewhere that the police were scheduled to, at 4:30 UK time, to start causing trouble, to try and create some kind of violence or some kind of reaction from people. And I didn't see if that happened. I mean, in 2 million people, you're not necessarily going to see everything that happens, but it seemed like it was very, very scheduled. And I guess it always has been, because it is a preset route, the London streets have to be cleared. But it just seemed very strange in that it was very clear this time that the organisers were very much in contact with the police, telling them our ETA, that kind of thing. And I guess there's always going to be that aspect to a large group of people, 2 million people, moving through a large city. But it just seemed something was very off to me. Some of it was fun. I mean, the music breaks were great. We'd sing along and dance and chant and all of that, and that was good fun. But yeah, just the energy was not very nice. I didn't like it.
Mm-hmm. I did notice one of the first videos that you posted, because I saw it on Facebook, and it felt exactly as you described it, like a festival, more like a festival atmosphere to me. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. It felt off in viewing it. I was like, this is pretty different than videos I had seen you or Mickey post in the past. I was like, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it was different. It was different type of people. I mean, some of the same people were there, the people that you see every time, and some of the kind of more well-known people that, as part of the marches and the movement have become a bit more well-known. But yeah, I didn't stay till the end, because it just got progressively more and more wrong to me. It was a great big party. It's a brilliant party, great festival, but it was almost like, in some ways, the reason we were marching was forgotten. I mean, not by everybody, of course, but generally speaking, just looking at the energy of it, it seemed that way to me. And it was kind of, to me, it was interesting as well, because since the last march, something, I guess, we always shift, so part of being human and being on this journey of life is to shift and change and, progress and learn things and all of these things. But something's definitely shifted in me since the last one, in that I think that people either forget or are not aware that something like this, march, which is great to do, but this march, there wasn't even much kind of talking to the crowd. It was more just a kind of a march. And because it's not publicized in the media or anything like that, people aren't necessarily aware about it. So to a lot of people, it's just a group of people walking through their street, not saying anything. It's a bit disjointed. And I feel that for me, there's kind of a lack of cohesion somewhere, in that, I think I posted this in my post in the wisdom group, but as I understand it, my sense is that, the true rebellion is not to hit out or put other people down or blindly do anything, whether it be blindly wear a mask or blindly go on a march thinking that that's enough. And then you can go back to your normal life and go, yeah, I marched, it's great. But then you're not doing anything else. To me, it's about a constant awareness, kind of honing the awareness, a constant raising in consciousness, a constant looking at what in you is being touched or what in you is being expressed externally, because like Aratima says, we all manifested this as a collective, as a global collective, we manifested this, and everything is coming to light now. It's kind of, I was talking to my friend about this earlier, that it's like, deep wells have opened up, and all the inner crap and all the subconscious stuff that we don't want to look at ever is coming up really clearly for us to look at, and it's expressing in all of the lockdown bullshit and all of the rules and regulations and the control that's happening. But it's also a reflection of the control and the lack of awareness in humanity, so we need to look at this stuff. It's not just about kind of, I'm marching and I'm done, that's it, woohoo, let's party, let's get drunk, and let's, get completely stoned, and let's just wave a few flags around. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. That's great, but there has to be a deeper truth to it, I feel, and it wasn't present for me yesterday anyway. A lot of people were posting that they felt it was a love-filled day and it was very joyful and all of these things. So I'm very glad for them. That's wonderful. But for me, it wasn't there. And I could feel some of it, but not in the way that I had before, or maybe there's a different awareness now, I'm not too sure. But I feel that for me, it's kind of, it has to all really be about love. And yesterday, there was some love, it was kind of people were marching for their grandchildren, for their children, for their parents. There was some very moving signs. Like one woman had one that said, I'm marching for my unborn child, for the freedom of my unborn child, which is beautiful. So there was that there, but it's very hard to explain. But to me, it has to be raised higher, in that there has to be a love and compassion on a higher level somehow, in that the people, maybe it was just the people I was near, I don't know, but quite a few of the interactions yesterday were kind of, why are you fucking wearing a mask? Take your fucking mask off, all this kind of stuff. And what's wrong with you? Blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And that doesn't help anyone. But yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it's great that the numbers are so high, 2 million people is fantastic. But there was also a sense, because it was very disorganized, it was kind of scatty, there was people wandering off in different directions and stuff. And it was almost like that was intentional, it somehow, because the last few marches have been very controlled in that they've been very, the marshals and people who have been working have been very good at keeping everyone together and what have you. Or maybe I've just been in the bit that's been kept together and I haven't been in a bit that hasn't before. I don't know. So, you don't know what happens on the other side, as it were. Yeah, it just kind of felt, I don't know, something about it. Because at one point we were told all to bring tennis balls and write messages on them and throw them into the Houses of Parliament gardens that we marched past. And that just seemed really pointless to me. Everyone's throwing these yellow tennis balls into the garden. There's police out, standing in the gardens. It's like, well, nobody's going to see that except the person who cleans them up. It's kind of, it seems a little strange. Yeah, I don't know. There's something off about it to me. But there's something about it, I feel that I can't really put into words, and so I'll give it a go. But there's something about it, the fact that the moment that, as we know, the light has won, there's definitely been a tipping point, and consciousness is rising, human consciousness is rising. And it's almost as if that's causing even more of a divide somehow, in that as it opens up, as humanity is opening up to more love and to higher vibrations of energy, those that are not in that energy seem even more obvious, and whether they be people that are wearing masks or people at the Freedom March who are in it with their hearts closed. I feel that there's a difference between marching because of love, for your unborn child or for your family member who's died or for your children's future or anything like that, and marching because you think everyone who wears a mask is stupid. It's a very different energy, and there seemed to be more of an energy of people marching because they felt that people were stupid. And it was kind of, there was something just, I don't know, there was just something a bit blind about it, in that I feel it's important, yes, to take a stand. It's absolutely important to stand in your truth. It's important to fight the tyranny. It's important to, love, and it's important to not give in to fear, absolutely. But there are ways and ways of doing it. And maybe at the next march, if I go, it will be very, very different. But this one, there was just something very off about it. And it was just, I think it was the control in that, if this is a government encouraged march, You know, if the leaders of the march or the people, the organizers, are working for the government or in some way connected, then we're just playing into their hands by marching. You know, it's just kind of like we're just doing what they want us to do while believing we're free. And that's not freedom. You know, freedom is standing outside of that, you know, and knowing you're free and not falling for that. So there just seemed a bit of a ignorance is bliss kind of energy there.
Yeah, it's so tough nowadays to know really like what you're being manipulated into and what, you know, what is what's not manipulation.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's a little bit of what I've been dealing with recently too. And part of my frustration is just like, what do you do? How can you trust anything at that point, you know? And then that's why I guess it is so important to have that level of trust inside yourself. But we've been so, I feel like as a society, taught out of that it's like, I think it's because, you know, consciousness is ascending on the planet, and that we're being forced into our own inner authority, our own sovereignty, essentially. But for people who haven't, you know, ever lived like that before, they don't even know what it is. It's almost like there's a form of paralysis, because it's like there was always this outward looking, because you could always find, if it wasn't the government as authority, you found another figure in another realm that was either opposed to the government or some sort of alternate in some way. And then it's just like, well, can't even trust that. So what do you do? Because we're not taught to trust ourselves. You kind of touched on it in the podcast that I'm editing, which I don't know when we're going to post that one, but is like the parents, right? Not trusting in their child that they're going to be safe and they can do things. And how do you learn to build trust in yourself when even from that young of an age, your parents essentially aren't trusting you to be able to kind of know and navigate physical reality?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're right. And I feel that that is definitely something that's shifting now, and it's becoming more and more important and crucial. In fact, people have, like you say, have always put their faith in false idols, in people that have feet of clay because they're human, but they expect superhuman behavior or leadership from them, you know, and everyone is human, everyone is fallible. And the only thing you can really trust, I mean, you can take what is true from these external leaders, you know, but it's never going to be 100% true, because there is that fallibility, that human aspect to them. So if you do that, you're basically giving away your sovereignty. You're making a religion out of that other person. Whereas the only thing you can really trust is your inner guidance, you know, and whether you want to call it God's guidance or God's will, or your inner knowing, or whatever you want to term it as, that's the only thing you can trust. And it has to be, and that's why we'd have to dig so deep these days now to get rid of all the crap that's blocking that. Anything, any programming, any thoughts and belief systems that have been instilled in us from a young age or even an older age have to go now, because they're no longer relevant. You know, so all you can trust is yourself, your deep inner self, you know, the self with a capital S. And everything else is just kind of dust in the wind, you know. And that's circling around why yesterday was just felt off to me in some ways, in that there was some people that were marching that are amazing people. You know, they've done so much, you know, for the cause, in inverted commas. I hate terms like that, but you know, that it's vocabulary, it's difficult to work around it. But there just seemed to be so much adulation there, you know. So sometimes it was kind of like, oh my God, you're amazing, I'm forever in your debt, you're incredible, all these comments, that kind of thing. And it's like, yes, be grateful to that person, they're doing an amazing thing, but they're still a human being, you know. They're not a god. Don't make a god out of this person, you know. And I was watching a video the other day. There's this guy, I sent it to you actually, the one that I sent to you, you know, he's called Dear Danny. And I really love what he says. He's very down to earth, and he's very kind of, to me, there's a really strong resonance of truth there. And he was talking about some of the shills that are out there at the moment. And it caused a bit of controversy, you know. Apparently you got a lot of comments from people going, oh my God, you're wrong, you're just wrong. And it's kind of like, well, what's that for an argument? You know, you're wrong, end of, you know. But he made some really valid points about it, in that, you know, if you are going to give all of your hope and your being and everything to these people, you've lost all your power. You're giving your power away to people who may or may not be manipulating you, may or may not be working for the government, may or may not be playing you and laughing at you, you know. So you can't do that. You have to take back your sovereignty. You have to stand in your sovereignty and know what is true, you know, because people are so fearful of doing that. And people, I don't know, there's something about truth that scares people. You know, I feel that, you know, as you and I have talked about a lot, you know, truth is something that's very important to me and very important to you. And it's something we talk about in our podcasts often. But people often are afraid of truth, you know, because they'll try and take the edge off by either believing the words of somebody else as true, so then they can blame them and in some ways, you know, step back and drop responsibility for their own owning of the truth, or they will only see part of the truth but be scared to see the rest of it, you know, and the truth is much bigger and wider than, you know, than a blinkered view can see. And I don't know exactly how that connects to yesterday, but in some ways it really does. It feels right to me. So there's something there. I'm not sure exactly how to put it into words.
Yeah, not exactly the last part that you spoke about, that I can't really connect that at the moment, but a little bit before that, when you're talking about people, you know, putting their beliefs on other people. And that speaks a lot to, I think, where the frustration comes from those people and where that energy came from, where they're looking at the people who are wearing the masks or doing whatever behavior that they haven't been so-called duped, you know, into doing. They're angry at them, I think, in the same way that it's still something that's occurring within themselves that they're ashamed of, and they're pointing it outward because they've done the same thing. They've just put their faith and their trust in someone else. It's still outside of them.
Yes.
And I feel like I can say that because I also was triggered a little bit by the video that you sent me, because I'm guilty of that. Is I put too much confidence or credence sometimes in what other people say from external sources. So then once that's challenged, it's can be hard to hear, and it's like, oh wow, like, you know, so essentially I feel like there's a fear that they've been duped, so then they externalize that fear as anger towards other people who have been duped, saying like, that's not me, that would never happen to me, see, I'm doing this, they're the ones that are doing that. But it's at the same time they still are doing it, it's just they're being duped in a different direction.
Yeah.
So
no, exactly. And it goes back to what I was saying before about, you know, people in the goldfish bowl mocking people that are outside the goldfish bowl for wearing masks. And it's like, well, you're still in the goldfish bowl. You know, you're not completely free, because you're still holding on to not only these things, you know, the resentments and all the triggering that happens, but you're not dealing with everything that's happening right now. Because right now, with the energies of the planet as they are, and the fact that we're ascending so quickly, all this shit is coming up and you have to deal with it. You know, you can't just push it back down again, because it'll just hammer you, you know. So everything that's coming up has to be either let go of, looked at, whatever, however you clear things. Otherwise, you're just pulling more wool over your eyes, you know. So courage is something that has to continue. It can't just be one step of courage and then you go, oh, I'm being brave constantly. You have to keep stepping further and further into what scares you, until you're no longer afraid at all. You can't just be no longer afraid of the first level. You have to be no longer afraid. You have to be fearless, you know, and that takes a lot of courage and that takes a lot of work, but it's something that's so necessary right now. And it seems to me that some people in this freedom movement are just, I mean, my God, some are really taking massive courageous steps, but some are not. And yesterday, a good number of them felt like they were not. You know, the energy of it was not. It was kind of, yes, great solidarity. It's nice to be with people that, you know, may share your beliefs or you feel that you can relate to. But for me, it's kind of, it's how you live that is the real, it takes more courage. You know, it's kind of not a march here and there or whatever it is great, but how do you live in your everyday life? What energy do you hold moment to moment? How do you deal with people every single day that you come into contact with? You know, what are you doing to raise awareness, whether it be communicating with them, helping them, or even just holding your own light? You know, it's because it's all about raising your consciousness, raising your vibration. If you hold that high vibration, which is love, which is light, that in itself is going to affect people around you. But you have to have the courage to hold it. You know, you can't just kind of take off the cap off the candle, you know, when you're at a march and go, yeah, freedom, and then go back to work and put a mask on or something. You know, it doesn't work that way. You have to be brave. You have to not only be brave in solidarity with 2 million other people, but you have to be brave as a single individual surrounded by people who don't believe what you believe. You know, that to me is more courageous. And that to me is what people, I feel anyway, need to be doing every day. You know, it's kind of going into work, and I mean, like some of the conversations I have at work, you know, I kind of make light of them a little bit and joke on Facebook and stuff, but it's doing that kind of thing. It's not backing down, whether it be, I don't mean necessarily having an argument with somebody, even though that can sometimes happen, but not backing down energetically, holding that light, you know? So sometimes when people come in and they kind of will start having a go at me for not wearing a mask or question me about this and the other, I won't necessarily, because I'm at work, I won't necessarily say what I would say outside of work, but I'll hold the energy of, no, I'm standing completely in my truth here and I am free. And it's really knowing and clearing out anything in you that is not free. That's the only way you'll be free, is just to keep doing that. You can't just believe it in your mind, I'm free, as long as I'm backed up by, you know, 2 million people. I'm not mocking anyone who went on the march at all. I'm not downplaying anything that they've done, because I was there as well, you know, but I feel it has to be more, it has to be deeper than that. And true freedom comes from within. Everything is, you know, it comes from that place of knowing inside, you know, and you can't be free if you're still fearful of something, you know. So if fear comes up, or if some kind of block comes up, that's what you work at, that's what you clear, you know, till the next something comes up, because it's all this fluid evolution. It's a journey. It's kind of, you have to have the willingness to change and potentially even contradict yourself, because it's all about being true in the moment, free in the moment, you know, and that can be different. It's not holding a really rigid stance and marching with that constantly. It's being willing to change and evolve and be open to shedding another skin and standing in a different truth, or a deeper truth, or a stronger awareness, a wider knowing, you know, because as soon as you stop moving, you die. You know, it can't be about stopping where you are and going, okay, I'm done, I've achieved the pinnacle, or I'm now free, or I'm now this, or whatever. You have to keep moving, and it's all about evolution. And yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. As usual.
There's plenty of good stuff in there, though, whether or not there's an end destination to the comment. But there were a couple things that came up for me while you were talking. One of them being about this freedom and the different types of action, or inaction that people can take regarding freedom. And, you know, instead of just going to the march and that being your active freedom, but living it in your life. Because for me, you know, I've been wanting to go visit my sister down in South Carolina for a while, but I don't want to play the game of being in the airport wearing a mask, going on the plane wearing a mask, that whole thing. And I'm not educated enough within myself to, you know, be able to fight that, or like, you know, purchase a plane ticket, go to the airport, and then have to deal with potentially not being able to fly or not make it through the airport because I don't want to play their games. But I was just thinking about it. I was like, what if everybody who felt the same way as I do just refused to play the game? And I don't mean refuse to play the game necessarily by going to the airport and not wearing a mask and, you know, not listening to the rules. Don't get me wrong, that would be great. But I'm speaking more about, like, I'm refusing to do it. I'm not buying a ticket. I'm not going to the airport. So what if everybody just didn't do that? That would send a pretty big message too, because I'm pretty sure a lot of the people who are doing it, they feel the same way I do, but they're still playing the game. They're still willing to play it, and I'm not willing to do it at this point. But that's something that I'm working on in terms of, like, learning more about the laws and how what I can do, can't do, you know, really from a legal standpoint. And thinking about it honestly at this point is just exhausting, because it just feels like a lot of work, but it's something that, you know, I really want to do. So the other thing that I wanted to bring up, though, was and this is where some of my frustration is coming, because I don't feel free on the inside or the outside. So, and that's incredibly frustrating. But that's why I feel like it's important for me to also be working on these outer things and learning the rules. And I'm going as far as I can. I want to be, you know, a human being. Of course, I woke up at like 4 a.m. and I started like watching these videos or whatnot in the middle of the night. But just being free, like driving without a driver's license. We're not supposed to have driver's licenses. So I'll say, as a human being, you're not supposed to have a driver's license for personal use. I'll leave that there for now because that's about as far as I've gotten so far. But yeah. So yeah, I really feel motivated though to work towards that end, is feeling more free internally and externally. And this whole battle with my job is also bringing that up heavily for me, because I have, an external source identified as my support system as far as income comes. And I know, at least in thought, that that's not accurate. That's not the way that life works. So.
But it's a progression. It's all a progression, and you are aware of that and you're working on it, and that's brilliant. That's all you can ask of a person to do. And I feel that, it's absolutely crucial to know what the law is and what your rights are and what you can and can't do, and not allow yourself to be fear-mongered into surrendering to them all, and going back to what you said earlier is absolutely right. I think one of the reasons I felt yesterday's march was it didn't quite resonate for me is because it's true. It's taking action that has an impact that is so important, and marching through the streets of London, and yes, great. But, if the 2 million people that were there yesterday did something or didn't do something, say didn't pay their tax bill or didn't pay their TV license bill, or all, walked into the Houses of Parliament and stood there, who could stop them? And that would make a massive impact, so it's part of that is kind of, take it further, do something else, take action. But it's just, doing something that would affect the government in a way that is tangible or is real, and walking along the streets of London when all the cars have been cleared out of the way and all the buses have been rerouted anyway, doesn't make the massive impact that it could do. But, if these 2 million people took some kind of action together, nobody could stop them. I mean, 2 million people coming at you, you wouldn't be able to. But again, it's that kind of, I don't know, I find this is quite funny. It's like it reminds me of this experience I had several years ago. But I was in a bar with some friends, back in the days when I used to drink. And as we were leaving, there was this woman, this homeless woman, I think she was standing outside, and she was just kind of staring at us all as we came out, and as I walked out, she threw a rock at me. And it hit me in the head. It hit me in my temple. And temples bleed a lot. So I was blood gushing everywhere. And the guys that were part of the group that I was with started chasing her down the street, but only fast enough to just be behind her, So every time she stopped, they stopped. But they were trying to catch her, but then she'd start moving and they'd move after her again. But then she'd stop and turn around and they'd stop. And it was kind of like, really? So you're doing this just for show, really? You're not actually going to do anything about it, in that she stopped. She's right in front of you. You can now talk to her or do whatever you were thinking you were planning to do, or telling me that you were planning to do. But they didn't. And then after doing the stop, start, walk to the end of the road, they came back and went, right, we told her. And it's like, well, I can hear everything you've been saying, not saying to them, to her, which is nothing. You've said nothing. So it's kind of, it was a sort of, oh, we must do something. But, oh, my God, I don't want to get confrontational and I don't want to get involved. So I'll pretend I'm doing something, or I'll just do a little bit of something, and that's not really doing something. That's just doing it for the sake of show, which is kind of worse than pointless, really. Because instead of pretending to chase her down the street, they could have, helped me stop bleeding, but
yeah, I mean, that is a good point. You definitely want to do something rather than just a show of doing something. But I do think that sometimes there is that step that people need to take and do just the show part of it. And then once they take that step and they realize it's not so scary, then I feel like sometimes that can help build the courage for like truer modes of action.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I really don't want to seem like what I probably am coming across as, which is denigrating of anybody who is doing this, because, it does take a lot of courage for some people to, come out on a march like this. But I was just talking about, how it just felt different to me, because in previous marches, it's felt much more unified to me anyway. This one seemed to feel unified to others, and they felt that it was a really great, successful day. So that's good. And I'm glad they got a lot out of it. But I just think maybe my perception has shifted. Maybe something has changed in me, which happens. And I think it's just part of, as we were talking about, the evolution of progression. Your perception will change all the time. But it was an interesting day. It was interesting being able to see all of that, because one of the things that I also felt as I was marching along and seeing these things and seeing the energies around me and all of that was I just had this incredibly deep, unshakable knowing that I'm completely free. None of this touches me. None of it touches me because it's all just show. It's just shadow. It's a play on the wall. It's just like I said in the post yesterday, it's just like a bad movie happening around me. And I'm just watching it on this really crackly screen going, that is so weird. But it's just, I think that I feel so free. And I feel that when you feel free, like really know that you're free, you're free. Mm-hmm. It's a sea of fear, basically. But we just have to rise above it and not allow the fear to be part of us. Because this is a great opportunity now just to shed the fear, because the fear is the opposite of love. So if we're fearful of anything, then in that space where that fear is, love can't reside. So we need to clear those spaces so love can just fill everywhere. And that's my rant over. That was our conversation about the march that happened in London on the 26th of June 2021. We also spoke about love and about fear. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe to our podcast channel. Click the bell button so you get notified about our future podcasts. And please share with your friends. And please comment below. All right, thanks. See you next time. Bye.